Thinking about refinancing your home or investment loan? Finny Mortgages makes it easy. Our team of expert brokers handle all the hard work, finding you the right loan at a better rate. Book a free no-obligation call today and see how easy refinancing can be. Visit finny.com.au or call us at 02 8866 2444 to speak with an expert. This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
G'day everyone, it's Liam Garman here, editor of Smart Property Investment, back today with another episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. And today's episode is a very exciting episode because it's a crossover with the Real Estate Business podcast, where we will be sitting down with Robbo, the Aussie Mortgage Guy, to unpack digital marketing and all things broking and real estate innovation in Australia at the moment. So if you're a real estate professional, if you want to know a little bit more about how the real estate industry works behind the scenes, or if you're just a business owner and you're looking for digital marketing tips, that podcast is coming up in just a second. Well, g'day everyone, it's Liam Garman here, editor of Real Estate Business, back today with another episode of the REB podcast. And to have a very special guest, because I know our listeners, they're going to recognize him. They're going to recognize his voice. They're going to recognize his dulcet tones. You'd recognize his face when the email goes out and there's an amazing picture of our guest. You're going to recognize him from Instagram, because this guy has got everyone talking in the world of real estate. And I am talking about the man who, alongside Cher and Prince, only has one name, Robbo, Aussie Mortgage Guy. Robbo, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, mate. Keen as mustard to chat, and I think I'm going to have to change my name just to Aussie from now on. I think that's going to be the handle I'll go by.
I was so proud of the intro as well. I was so proud of the intro, putting you amongst the stars. But Rob, of course, Aussie Mortgage Guy, and director and founder of Trusted Finance. And the name of the game today, we're going to be talking about digital marketing, an incredibly important thing. Robbo, you know it as well as anyone in this game. Whether you're an agent, whether you're a broker, you're scrapping for listings, and you've got to cut through the clutter somehow. You're scrapping for vendors, listings. In your case, you're scrapping for people to come to you to be their broker of choice. Best place to start, Robbo, from your perspective, what are you seeing right now in the world of digital marketing that's getting cut through and actually delivering results for people?
Yeah, look, I guess it comes down to, regardless of your profession, whether you're a real estate agent, a financial advisor, a mortgage broker, the name of the game is about building your personal brand. And the place where most of the eyeballs are glued at the moment is on people's phones. So we're looking at social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok being the three key players. But really, you need to be thinking as a real estate agent, how can you build a personal brand on these platforms in order to build that trust with the person on the other end of the phone? Because at the end of the day, someone's only going to reach for their phone and reach out to you and get them to come to their house to do an appraisal on their home so you can secure that listing. It's only going to happen if they trust you. And so that should be the medium that you're starting off on those social media pages to build your personal brand.
Trust is one of those things that's easier said than done, right? How do you go about building trust through your socials?
I think the number one, and I heard this early in the piece when I first started creating content back in 2021, if you provide the most value, you will gain the most attention. And you would be naive as a real estate agent to think that the game of social media and the game of business in general isn't about being an attention seeker, because that's exactly what it is. You do need to become an attention seeker in order to gain that business. And so how do you stand out in a crowd of thousands of real estate agents in your city? Well, you need to provide the most value. And when you're providing value, it's not, that doesn't mean that you're asking for business in every single social media post that you create. And that's a mistake that I see every professional make, not just real estate agents. We have this instinct to go, okay, I've spent 45 minutes creating a piece of content that's going to go out on the socials. And so I need to pitch myself. But if you can try and let go of that desire to pitch yourself in every single post and instead just provide some tips or some educational value to the people on the other end, it's amazing how far that will go in terms of building trust with your potential customers in the future.
And I know that's something that you do a lot of, the tips and the educational value, especially when you're talking about serviceability, loans, saving money for people's first property.
That's exactly right. And I bounce into the real estate space as well. And I create videos that are designed to, give home buyers eight steps or 8 tips on the home buying journey. What is it going to look like when you're negotiating with a selling real estate agent, for example? What are some tips that you should embed into your contract of offer in order to make sure that you're protecting yourself, like building in pest inspections, things like that, but also how to read a market. Should you be putting an offer in below the value of the house? What does a price guide mean? And I say all of this because this is the important type of content that real estate agents should be creating themselves. And also, they can dip into other areas of the home buying journey as well. How do you find a good settlement agent, right? How do you know that you've actually found a good building and pest inspector? These are some of the things that real estate agents can really speak to. And it's important to, I guess, broaden your web a little bit in terms of the types of things that you're willing to talk about on the socials.
What would you say to agents, and maybe we can make it broader, anyone in that kind of real estate ecosystem? What would you say to them if, they think they're doing the right thing? They think, they're following all the trends. Doing what everyone else is doing, but they're just not getting any real traction, any real breakthrough. I've seen it. You've come up on my Instagram quite a lot. And this is actually our first time that you and I have ever spoken. So
yeah.
You couldn't boil that down to the fact of, you guys, talk and text, so therefore you were suggested on my feed. No, you've kind of broken through that. We don't want to necessarily use the word too cheaply, but quote unquote being viral. You hit that viral button. People have talked about your advice. Your advice is going out there. I've seen you, my team's seen you. What's your advice to people that are routine, but they're just not making any breakthrough?
I think it honestly comes down to volume. There are going to be social media marketing educators who come out here and say, you need to do this and you need to use these hashtags and do exactly this for this many seconds. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to trial and error, because there is only one you. You are the best thing about your social media page because you're unique and nobody else can be like you. But what you need to figure out is what works and what doesn't work. Now, to put it into perspective, there are some real estate agents who make 1 piece of content a week. There are others who make 3 a week. There are others who make 1 a day. When I first started making content, my goal was to post 1 piece of content a day for 14 days. In those 14 days, 13 pieces of content crashed and burned and went absolutely nowhere. Hardly any views. And 1 piece of content did okay, just. But I then took that 1 piece of content and used that as the baseline and the foundation for the next 60 pieces of content, where I posted 1 per day. And it wasn't until 3 or 4 or 5 months down the track that I started to realize, of the 120 pieces of content that I've made, these 4 or 5 tended to get more engagement than the others. And it's that trial and error which allows you to build up the type of content and the confidence that you should be creating. But it's like going to the gym. You're not going to see any results unless you're going consistently. And I would be recommending at least 1 post a day, just so you can learn the ropes and try and figure it out.
Well, I think that's so reasonable. We can talk about algorithms like we're looking into a crystal ball, until the cows come home. But realistically, you're 100% right. If you make 1 good video, great. It's a flash in the pan. Realistically, you're not going to get the eyeballs in that video to make you go viral. And it does take a really, really long time to get that level of traction. Though, looking from the outside, Robbo, 1 piece of content a day, it doesn't sound like much for people that don't necessarily work in the world of content creation, digital marketing. However, 1 good video a day is actually quite a lot of effort.
Absolutely. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. In the beginning, particularly when you don't have the skills associated with making content efficiently, then you're going to have to set aside time in your schedule. And it might mean getting up earlier. It might mean sacrificing a portion of the day where you might be doing something else, or it might be doing it late at night. But I would recommend putting at least 60 minutes aside a day. That's the minimum amount of time you would need to think of an idea, actually write down a script if you're not confident to say it on the fly, and then record the piece of content. But it doesn't have to be this magically curated and edited piece of content. It can literally be you holding the phone up in front of your face, looking at the camera and giving a piece of advice. And I'll actually give everyone an example of someone that I think that they should, in the real estate space, that they should go and watch their content. His name is Corey Adamson. He's a real estate agent over in Perth, and he creates content on TikTok and Instagram. And it's very, very simple content. It might be talking about the home opens that he had over the weekend, the number of people that came through on the home open, and really how many offers he was receiving, kind of the range of those offers on the properties that he had open. Some hot tips, for people looking for property, what the Perth property market is doing at the moment. Should people be trying to buy a home in the inner city suburbs or in the outer suburbs? What does that look like? What's the difference? But most of his videos run for 60 seconds to 120 seconds, and it's just him looking at the camera, giving advice. But he does it every single day. And that's why he has tens of thousands of followers, and he actually posted a screenshot the other day on his stories of the amount of engagement, and I wrote it down because I thought it would be valuable to share. So over a 7-day period, I think it was last week or the week before, he had over 467,000 views on his posts and over 9,700 profile views. So that's people watching content going, this guy, I think I trust him. There's value here. And then they go and click on his profile, and then they've committed a real estate agent to their memory. How powerful is that for when you're wanting to reach out to a real estate agent in the future, for you to be the one that people trust? And so that's what he's doing. He's building his brand.
Oh, that is so true, Robbo. I think most of the real estate agents that come to mind for me to start off with, I don't have very positive views of them because they're the ones that stick on my train. Right. It's the ones you hear the bad stories about. But obviously there are flow-on benefits. It's not just the leads; it's the recruitment and retention. People want to be part of a high-performing team. This is what you're putting out there. Going back to the gym analogy as well, I think it's so that's the best way of looking at it. You don't have to do a bodybuilding level push-pull legs routine 6 days a week for hours and hours and hours a day. You don't necessarily need to be the massive buff bodybuilder. If you go for a jog 10, 20 minutes a day, if you go for a jog, you get your steps up. Oftentimes that's all you need for health. That's the exact same with this. You don't need to over egg it. It's just about the consistency. Just do it every day, and over the long term, you will see those wins. Now, Robbo, your brand is built on typically financial education. How has that helped you stand out in a crowded mortgage and property space, and how has it changed your business?
Yeah, look, so from my business now over the last kind of 3.5, 4 years has grown from literally started just like everyone else at 0 followers, and 0 impact on social media. And I also didn't have any background in social media. I just picked up the phone and started talking to the camera. And so it's gone from 0 followers now to across Facebook, TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat at over 1.6 million. So it's now the most followed platform in the real estate, the finance and the mortgage broking space. But more importantly, because when we talk about social media, a lot of people like to talk about their followers and their engagement stats and how many views they've received. But at the end of the day, none of that really means anything if it doesn't do anything for your bottom line, how it changes your business. And so what I like to do is, discuss, yeah, sure, this is what you can see in terms of engagement. But as we look at the funnel that this has created, the sales funnel for my customers, over that time, I've generated over 50,000 home buyer leads, and that's converted to over $1.2 billion in settled mortgages for my mortgage broker referral partners. But the most mind-blowing thing about that statistic is that I haven't spent even $1 on advertising my business or my social media posts or, Google SEO advertising or optimization. I haven't spent $1 on any of that. Everything is purely organic just by creating content that provides value on those social media platforms. And then those customers have slowly filtered down my sales funnel and gotten to the point where they've clicked the link in each of my bios on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, and that takes them to my contact form, and they've completed an incredibly comprehensive contact form in order to become a lead of mine and get connected to a mortgage broker. So yeah, it's had a massive impact on my business, and I am as committed as anyone else I think that you would meet to saying that organic content creation can literally blow up your bottom line.
And I think it's a fantastic way of looking at it because you're cutting beyond those vanity metrics. I've seen 1,000 agents out there go and they buy followers online, they do all the flashy stuff on the videos. But at the end of the day, There's no point if you're not generating leads, if you're not deepening your pipeline, it is purely vanity. And I
Yeah.
think there's, unless you've got that pipeline, that funnel mindset, which you've got, Robbo, a lot of it can also become an echo chamber. And I see it a lot where when you see an agent and they're on Instagram, they've got what is like a really, really, really slickly well-produced video. And I look at it, I actually, in an old job, used to work in digital marketing. And I look at it, I'm like, you've probably got a creative agency you're working with. They're probably on a several $1,000s a month retainer. It would have taken, a good 4 or 5 hours to make this short form video. And then I look at, say, the comments, and the comments, there's 15 comments. 14 of them are other agents, and then the 15th is the guy's mum saying, wow, this is so good. When you're in that level of an echo chamber, you're not actually getting any benefit. You're not actually getting the leads. Is that something that you see often, and how can people break out of that mindset?
I think, unfortunately, what I see most often with real estate agents and their social media pages is real estate agents are so good at selling property, which is a product. And so all of the marketing agencies that they work with are focused on creating pieces of marketing, pieces of content that sell a product. And that's why we have a flashy walkthrough of a house, right? Because we want to make this house look desirable and beautiful. But product marketing is completely different to service marketing. And as a real estate agent, you need to also be marketing your services to potential customers who want to eventually sell their home, which is where we get those appraisals from, those listings from, right? And that's a completely different style of marketing. And that's why service marketing, just like the type of marketing that I do, pitched at people who want to buy homes from their finance perspective, I'm doing that service marketing. They really need to understand that it's a completely different style. You don't need to create a flashy magazine style, beautiful piece of content about yourself. You just need to show that you're genuine, that you're trustworthy, and that the person on the other end will actually want to sit down across from you in a meeting and do business with you. And they're only going to figure that out if you're confident enough to get in front of the camera and just speak authentically, raw and genuine about a particular topic. And so I think that that's the disconnect, is a lot of real estate agents don't understand that because they're so used to working with marketing companies that only create that product style, sleek advertising for the homes that they want to sell.
And I think that's part of the danger with, and correct me if you have a different opinion on this, but I think that's the danger in not striking a balance between, say, like meme advertising, right? Where there is a risk that if you're seen as being too comedic, if you just meme post all the time, or if it is that more, that less serious nature rather, you don't have the balance as a trustworthy professional, because people do have to have their trust in you, especially at an agent level. Do I trust you with my life's biggest asset, which is my home? Or from the broking perspective, do I trust you with a 30-year financial tool here, which is going to cost me several $100,000 in interest over 30 years? So you do have to have that level of professionalism. Robbo, how do you balance that? Because online you are quite approachable, you are quite funny, but then you're offering like a really serious product here, which is the mortgage for someone's livelihood. How do you strike that balance?
So the first element, right, and this is another mistake I see people across all professions make, is they come online to social media and they just start talking with no purpose or focus. And so before I created my very first piece of content, I thought about who is my ideal customer? Who am I trying to pitch to? Now, for me, that was first home buyers on TikTok. Now, first home buyers on TikTok at that stage back in 2021 were primarily between the age of 25 and 34. And they also were quite informal in the type of education that they wanted to receive. And so I created my online avatar, Robbo, the Aussie Mortgage Guy, a laid back but informative version of myself with the Australian ochre style part of my personality slightly dialed up, because I wanted to be approachable from that ideal customer avatar. But then I understood exactly what you said, that if you lean into only creating entertaining style content too much, then you don't get to build that trust for somebody to think, you know what, I actually I can come on the journey with this guy. And so that's when I learned about the foundational elements of content creation. There's three core pillars that we need to unpack. The first is educational content. The second is entertaining content. And then the third is inspirational content. And so you need to be thinking, how am I constantly creating content in these three pillars in order to build my persona online? And so if you only create educational content, you're going to miss out on the virality of the entertaining and the inspirational style content. If you only lean into the entertaining content, you might get some really good engagement stats, but you're not going to build trust, which you would get from the educational content. And then if you're only creating inspirational content, then you could be misinterpreted as just a motivational page and not someone who's actually providing a serious service. And that's why we need to be creating content that leans into each of these pillars.
That is fantastic. That is so true. People in this space are always looking to innovate. They're always looking to see what's happening next. Where do you see the next evolution of digital marketing in real estate and finance? And how are you grasping that in trusted finance?
I think that the idea of personal brand and the importance of personal brand is only increasing. I think as we lean more and more into this AI revolution that we're currently going through, if it gets to a point where people are only going to go into an AI search engine to say, find me a real estate agent in Melbourne, then the person who's built up the biggest personal brand that can be read by any type of AI engine or search engine is going to be the person who has the monopoly and the control over that. And then leaning into the AI revolution, you need to be thinking as a real estate agent, how can you use AI to help create scripts, to help create marketing plans and social media content that results in you having to put in less labor so you can put out more and more content? Because I think it is a volume game. The person who can be creating the most content, quality content, but the most content most often is the one who's probably going to stand out. And so for me, it's how can I create more and how can I do it with less labor?
That is so fantastic. Now, in trusted finance, you bill yourself as a connector, helping buyers reach their ideal brokers. Talk to us a little bit, trusted finance. Let's lift the hood. What do you do day to day and how do you help your people?
Yeah, sure. So basically there's two, facets or two sides of what I do. Number one is create content to help home buyers and educate them and plant the seed, get them to understand that there's so many options and pathways out there. I hope obviously that when they start educating themselves that they remember that I'm the one that was providing them with that value. So when they are ready, they're going to come back to me. And then the other side of my business is that I spend a lot of time interviewing and cultivating relationships with my mortgage broker referral partners to make sure that I have and I am working with the best in the business. And so when these home buyers reach out to me, it means that I can connect them to a mortgage broker who's going to support them on the journey and knows the ins and outs of all the different government, incentives that are in play, or might have a little bit of an insight into the different housing markets based on the city that they're in. And that's really the value that I provide the home buyer, the customer, is the fact that you've actually got someone who they've built a relationship with through my videos and they trust, cultivating and interviewing these mortgage brokers. It's not just a random Google search that mortgage brokers are sponsoring to be at the top of. And I actually had a mortgage broker say, a few weeks ago when I was interviewing him, he said, why would a home buyer come through your page and fill in your contact form? Because my contact form is 33 questions long. It's probably the most comprehensive contact form as a first point of entry compared to any business that's out there, because I want the home buyers who are motivated and I want the ones that trust me to come on the journey with me and my mortgage broker referral partners. And he said, why would they go on that? Why would they go and do that as opposed to just Googling mortgage broker in my suburb? And I said, because they trust me, because they have watched usually between 50 to 500 pieces of my content, usually over 6 months to 18 months before they have the confidence to click the link in my bio. And when you have built a relationship with someone and you have that pure connection to someone's personal brand, I think I have the proof in the 50,000 home buyers that have reached out to me that it works, right? And I think that so many real estate agents can lean into that. And there are more and more real estate agents who are understanding that, like Corey Adamson, the guy that I mentioned earlier. He understands now that he really has targeted that per social media market. And so his personal brand can just continue to grow with very little effort.
And I think that says a lot about the business as well. Robbo, you could easily hire a few more brokers and just tick and flick people, but that goes to the core of your business. That's not what you're about. You understand that, hey, these people are putting a lot of trust in me. They believe in my values. So I think it's fair to say it's a little bit more of a hurdle. It's a little bit more of a barrier for people to come in, so you can work as a true partnership where you can help them access a mortgage which best fits their lifestyle. Everyone's different. You and I, Robbo, are different. You and I, the listeners, are different. So when you're dealing with those financial instruments, they have to be very unique to the individual. And by you being able to get to know each of your leads to that level of depth, it means that you can actually support them more. Again, it's up to a 30-year journey for them. You want to give them the best possible package that they can have.
Exactly right. And that's why working with and finding people who are within the industry who know what they're doing is so important. And in my experience, you're only going to figure that out until you get across from them in a meeting and actually ask the hard questions about what their customer journey looks like. And that's why I interview each of the brokers that I work with.
Yeah. Now, if you want to hear more from Robbo, you can come across to the REB Innovation Summit on September 25, where Robbo is going to be unpacking. Would you want to give us a quick précis of your speech?
Yeah, sure. Look, really what I am going to teach you to do is how to become a key person of influence within the real estate industry, as opposed to what a lot of real estate agents think that I am, which is an influencer, because to be honest, that couldn't be further from the truth. I'm not an influencer. I don't wake up each day and vlog my day and, show shots of my coffee in the morning and everything like that. I have become a key person of influence in the mortgage industry, and as a result, become a really trusted brand. And so I want to teach real estate agents how to do exactly that. But more importantly, I'm actually going to teach you the practical skills. So how do I literally create a piece of content that's educational? How do I create one that's entertaining? And how do I create one that's inspirational? Because once you have those three pillars, those three foundations, then you can really take your page to the next level. And then I'm going to actually reveal some of the behind the scenes. So show some of the pieces of content that I have made, show the behind the scenes of those content, some of the engagement stats and what that looks like in terms of lead generation. I'm going to show my sales funnel. How do I get these viewers of my videos to actually click the link in my bio and become a lead? How do I capture that information? What software do I use? And then most importantly, I'm going to teach real estate agents how to create evergreen content. And that's going to become an absolute time saver. So evergreen content is the content that you create today that you can recycle and reuse well into the future, so that when you're in a position where you go, I really need to post a piece of content today, but you don't have the 30 to 60 minutes up your sleeve, then you can grab one of these old videos that you've created in a very particular way and then push them out. And it's that constant recycling of content that allows you to build a brand that basically never sleeps.
That is fantastic. And if you want to hear more from Robbo, come to the REB Innovation Summit or shoot him a message. I'm very sure he'll be happily obliged to respond and support you on your journey. But I think that is all we have time for today on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, Robbo, the Aussie Mortgage Guy. I got it right that time.
Thank you so much, mate. Looking forward to seeing everyone at the summit.
Fantastic. And to all of our listeners, that is all we have time for today on the REB podcast. But until next time, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.
Property management is the backbone of Australia's real estate sector, and it's time the industry took centre stage. Introducing the inaugural REB Property Management Excellence Awards 2025, a landmark moment to honour the people, offices and networks driving real change. This isn't just another awards night, it's a movement to recognise excellence, leadership and innovation in one of real estate's most vital sectors. Be part of history at pmxawards.com.au.